All right, we are live. Thanks everybody for coming in today, joining us. So I met this guy right here, Nick Klingensmith. I saw him on eCarrier Checks live stream one day, and they're talking about sales. They're talking about motivation, problem solving, all different kinds of things. And he said some things that cut to the bone with me there, Nick. And I thought to myself, I gotta bring this guy on. We gotta talk. I gotta get to know this guy. So thanks for coming in today, Nick. Would you care to just introduce yourself and give us you have a really interesting life story. I'm fascinated by it. I don't even know the whole thing. So tell us what's going on with you. Tell us a little bit of your story.
Adam, thanks for having me, and thanks for reaching out too. Absolutely. So my story, the headliners, is that I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover fatality car accidents. I have sleep apnea. I have nerve damage in multiple spots. I almost died from meningitis. I went all 12 rounds with COVID. Terrorists once put a nerve gas bomb threat on my airplane. That's not relevant at all, but it's just interesting anyway. And in 2016, my boss, and this is back when I was in logistics, my boss walks in my office and he looks at me and he's like, "Nick, I want to do a Spartan race and you're going to do it with me." And I looked at him and I thought, no, no, fuck no. An 8 to 10 mile trail run with obstacles? I had no intention of making myself that uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's when I went home that night and I discovered the problem. I already was that uncomfortable, but I had everything going for me. I had been promoted at work. I was a VP of sales of our truckload department. I had about 90 people working for me and we were crushing it. I was dating a new girl. That's my now wife. I was 2 years sober and I had just decisively beaten cancer for the 4th time. I had everything going for me and I realized I was just terrified of losing it all. I had overcome so much to get there and achieved so much. And I realized that I was on a plateau and I was stuck. And so I said yes to the challenge. And that was 7 years, 104 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, including Boston, Chicago, New York, and Berlin, and about 60 or 70 other endurance races, obstacle course races, sufferfest, if you will, since. And that was a vehicle for my transformation. I needed to do something different. And a lot of the lessons in my life and a lot of things that I'll talk about even today manifest through physical activity, but it's really a representative of everything that I developed in my mindset. And that became apparent to me in 2021 when I published my book, Through the Fire. Mm-hmm. Now, the first version of that book was 125,000 word, like mindless manifesto that was just out there to pump the ego. You can't tell my story without being really raw and honest about the things that I did. And yet it was full of defense. It was a great, like, cool look into endurance sports, but I mean, it might as well have had like Jake Gyllenhaal and The Rock on the cover. All right. It wasn't honest. And so I spent the 2nd year working on that book, revising and cutting away until I was forced to see things from a different perspective. I was forced to see things without my own lies, without my own bullshit. And a lot of the lessons in my life then became apparent, and how I've been able to apply them both personally and professionally. And now 7 months ago, I left my corporate career in logistics, and now I am a motivational speaker and a coach. And what got us here today, like you said, is we were on that show, and I've written another book, which will be released in about a month on Amazon. It'll be called Selling Inspired, a mental endurance guide for enduring sales performance. Here's the thing. It's not a sales book. It's a book for salespeople. It's a book for people who have to sell. And the reason that I say enduring is because unless you are a true sociopath, sales takes something from you. Most of sales is the uncomfortable activity. Closing is the easy part. Everything else is the hard work, and it's uncomfortable, but it's not physically uncomfortable. It's mentally and emotionally draining. And so much of it is because we put our emotional and mental everything into the activity that we don't like the most, and it builds up on us and it sucks our soul, and then we don't do the things that we need to do in order to do the things that we can do. So the book is really, it's a guide for how to take ourselves out of the equation, how to focus more on math over emotion and process, and really how to accept the fact that sometimes we have to do the grunt work. Like, that's just part of the job. So yeah. I know I went on for a while, but I think that's a good lead up for why we're here today.
No, that's really good. And that part that you just talked about, the uncomfortable part and the willingness to do it and the willingness to learn about it, get coached, practice it, that's that last final step that most people never take to go that final mile in your business and in your personal life. I mean, you made some huge changes in your personal life, but that also relates to business. And I like the fact that you can teach that. Incidentally, I put all of Nick's social media contacts in the description of the video here. I got his website scrolling across the bottom here. Email is nick@stridemotivation.com. Backing up a second, how do you make that decision to make the leap of faith from your job to what you're doing now? Like, what's that process? Did you just say one day, screw it, I'm out, I'm going to do this? Or was it a long process to get there?
Well, sometimes the opportunities present themselves at the right time, and sometimes we're forced into them at the wrong time. So after I published my book, now I did very little to promote the book. I wrote it for me. It was wildly therapeutic, but I published it for the person who might need the message. And it turns out that a lot of people found it and a lot of people needed the message. And over the last couple of years, they've told me about it, and they've reached out to me and they share their stories with me and their things that resonate with them and tell me how my story helped them. And so I knew I had something more to give. I knew I had a different purpose to serve, and I just wasn't sure how to manifest it. And so it was probably about 1.5 years ago where I had lunch with a buddy of mine, somebody that I used to work with in logistics. And I told him that, and I told him how I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to share my message. I wanted to help others, but I had no idea how to get into the business of it. And so he actually recommended a friend of his who runs a company called The Purpose Company, and they're entrepreneur coaches for speakers and so forth. And so I actually joined up with them about 13 months ago. And my idea was that I would slowly develop my craft, learn how I was going to get into the market, learn the business of it. And probably like a year from now, after I've saved up more money, and everything is perfect in the world, be able to make that bridge and then pursue that. Then October afternoon, I got a call from my boss, said, "We're making cuts and you're one of them."
Oh, well, that makes the decision a little bit easier. So
I texted my wife, and this wasn't largely unexpected, to be honest. I texted my wife and I told her, and she calls me up right away and she goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I go, "Listen, you know how I'm always worried about money?" She's like, "Yeah." "You know how I'm always worried about my job?" "Yeah." "Well, now I only got one thing to worry about." And the fact is, I meant it. And here's why. I wasn't happy for those last 2 years. I was miserable. I was doing a job that I didn't like. And at this point, even though I had risen to, high levels of my career at previous positions, like I was in a different company that I didn't have, long-term roots in. And I knew I had a different purpose to serve. And so it was really hard for me to stay focused. And it was during that time that I realized, though, that I don't need to wait to serve my purpose. My purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. That's not my profession. Speaker and coach is just how I get paid. My purpose is to help others. So why do I need to be off the clock in order to do that? So working in logistics, my God, is there a better honey hole of opportunity to help people than in the transportation industry? So my days were spent trying to, number one, I worked my ass off. I prospected like crazy. You have to understand, okay, I was a VP with 90 people working for me at some point. Now I'm cold calling like a 22-year-old kid on his first job.
Wow.
All right. What a gut punch to the ego, except this. My purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. So grinding out the cold calls is just it's doing the reps. That's it. It's getting in the gym. It's doing the things that you don't want to do. My ego is not about that activity. My ego is about ego is probably the wrong word on that part, but my goals and objectives are about the things that I can achieve. It's about the higher purpose I'm trying to serve. So probably a year ago, I was talking to a friend of mine and telling him how this was something that I wanted to do. And he challenged me on it. Like, why didn't I do it then? And I told him, I was like, oh, I'm not, I'd have to change this. I want to have money for that and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, I get it. So you want to do all this stuff. You just don't want to sacrifice anything for it.
Mm.
And
well,
he was right.
I think you've sacrificed plenly. I mean, you've
well, I meant as far as the business and making
Okay.
that move to make it a business,
Okay.
and that's why the second time around, I could have went out and immediately looked for another job. I'm got a pretty solid resume. I'm sure I could have landed okay, but to what end? I wasn't going to be committed, and I couldn't half-ass it for somebody else. I knew what I needed to do. So I was ready to be all in, but here's also the difference is I've seen the impact of what I can do. I have an unwavering belief in my ability to help, an unwavering belief in my overwhelming success. But here's the difference now. I'm willing to suffer for it.
Mm.
I'm willing to suffer for it. Not just put in the reps, not just do the uncomfortable work, but to risk going backwards in order to move forwards. Because I see the goal. I see the purpose of what I'm trying to do. It's not about money. Money is, again, just a vehicle for how we do certain things. And so it's stepping outside my ego is just step one.
Okay. Well, in order just to put this all together for a second with what we're talking about, do you mind going back and just kind of telling us what your history is in logistics? What kind of things did you do? What did you build?
Yeah. I actually started with a small DHL reseller back in 2005, known as United Shipping Solutions. We were United Shipping Solutions' largest franchise. We were a DHL reseller. We sold LTL services, and I think we might have sold like 3 full truckloads in 5 years. So it wasn't really part of our business at that time. By 2009, I was a sales manager. We had outside sales reps. I had developed the training program that we did not have before. In fact, we were offering our training program to other franchisees at that point. I had developed our inside sales program, and this is 2009, where it was still, I don't know, we were really outside sales warriors. So this was a new transition for us. But it was around then that DHL made the announcement that they were going to pull out of the U.S. or domestic services.
I remember that.
That was a huge part of our business, and it was probably 90% of the entire franchise systems business. So without getting into details, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to divulge or not, even though it was forever ago, we staged a coup d'etat. We left the franchise system, and we took a number of other franchises with us unofficially. And then we became a company known as Blue Grace Logistics.
Oh, okay. And everybody's heard of them.
So the CEO, Bobby Harris, a good friend, worked for him for a long time, since 2005. And my role in the company really evolved. And the main thing I did while I was there was build teams. Built the inside sales team, built the first truckload team, built the recruiting team, built the training team. It was build this process for whatever business problem or thing that we're doing now. And the thing I think I focused on the most, that I enjoyed the most, was the personal development. I brought a lot of people up from $9 an hour inside sales rep to some seeing manager, director, VP positions, others who have gone on to careers of their own outside of the company. And that was probably the favorite thing that I did, even though I was really responsible for sales in general. I was there until 2019, and I don't talk about this a lot because I never want to make it seem like I'm saying anything bad about them. But like anybody, the company was going through changes. I mean, I've been there a long time, and I've told a lot of people, I said, listen, you're going to have to change with the company if you want to stay, right? Like, and it's okay though, if not all of our paths end up in the same place. I never knew I was talking about me. And so for about the last year or so while I was there, as the company, changed, we had gotten the private equity. We were just this different identity, different type of thing that we were going after. It just really wasn't where I want my career to go anymore. I was a VP. It was a good job. It just really wasn't going to be what captivated me anymore. I liked building things. And at that point, the company was built. And they've been doing well since then. So I left on very good terms. As a matter of fact, they were my first client as a consultant.
Oh wow!
So after I left there, I didn't leave there for another job. I left just because I needed to do something different. And so I was a consultant for about a year and a half, where I did some recruiting. I built training programs, as well as actually built some sales teams from the ground up, all in the logistics field. Ultimately spent the last couple of years working for a 3PL, where again, I built them an office, and then, and that was where we end up today. So out of the almost 19 years in transportation, it's all been in sales, one way, shape, form, or another. At least more than half of that I spent in a leadership position.
Well, so we're talking to the right guy here today.
We're talking to a guy. I don't know, I'm the right guy.
Yeah. One thing we've tried to encourage is people start at least trying to do some of their own sales. It's that one missing piece that keeps most people from getting over the top. And it's not easy. It can be very intimidating. It can be time consuming. If you can't do it, you have to hire somebody to do it. You can hire an outside salesperson, or somebody called a freight broker. People want to eliminate freight brokers. Well, you better learn to do some of your own sales, is bottom line what it comes down to. So have you worked with, you did consulting for brokerages and such. Have you done any work for carriers at all, or people in that position?
I've worked with individuals, and the couple of companies that I built sales teams for, they were asset based.
Okay.
And I built them the logistics team.
So what are some the challenges with that? What's like the number one misconception or misunderstood thing, or thing that people are scared of doing?
I don't know if there's a fear, it's a fear of not wanting to know what you don't know. And what I mean by that is this is probably what you've seen a lot of in the last couple of years, as so many different 3PLs and logistics companies are popping out with their 1 to 2 employees, despite the fact that there's 4,000 of them. They think all you need is an MC number.
Okay.
They think it's just buy people, put them in there, they go get the freight. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day. He works for a fairly smaller 3PL out of the Chicago area, and they're kind of new, but literally they don't know who their ideal prospect is. They don't really have a process. They just have some very kind of loose pricing parameters. So they hire all these people and they just say, go get them, because they don't want to have to roll up their sleeves and say, hey, we should probably figure out our business strategy before we do this. And so what I mean by that too is you see just a lot of the people that I would see then and even now, I think they just think it's easier to do. They just have to press the button and say, hey, I'm a logistics company now.
Okay.
And here's my 800 number, start booking shipments with us.
Why isn't my phone ringing?
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, I get it, because I actually this morning, I did a whole 50 pull-ups, but for me, that's a huge deal. And
it would take me about a year.
Well, it took me, feels like about that long. Put it this way, I was down to doing 1 rep sets, but you got to work your weaknesses, because the longer that you ignore your weaknesses, the stronger they become. I'm an obstacle course racer. There's only so much I can do without grip and upper body strength. And so if I don't work my weaknesses, I'm going to fail at things that I shouldn't be failing, which means I'm going to start making excuses for why I'm failing them. I'm going to make excuses that I lie to myself about. I'm going to blame others that I'm going to start to resent and have attitudes for, who really, what do they have to do with me not doing pull-ups? The thing spirals out of control when the fact is all I have to do is take responsibility for this thing that's missing and take a step towards it. And that is the missing part, is just the willingness to say, I don't know how to do this part, or I'm weak at this part, or I'm just not as strong as this part, or fuck it, I don't want to do this part. It's okay to say that, but then we still have to do the work.
Right. So you're talking to right now a lot of individual truck owners. I see somebody in here that has about 25 trucks. So you have a little bit of a diverse crowd of carriers here. What do we do? Where do we start? What's the process? Sit down, do an outline. A lot of us are just lost. Like, what's that first step for sales? If you're one guy going out there trying to sell yourself to, you've identified a small shipper here that you think you got it in with. How do you start?
Starts before that. And this is what you have to ask yourself. What do I do well? What do I do better than others? That's question number 2. Question number 3 is, what do I do better than others that I can specifically cite how? So anybody with a CDL is probably saying, well, I'm the truck driver, but guess what? There's plenty of them. So that doesn't mean anything at all.
Right.
So what do I do well? In other words, what's your niche? What is the thing that you want? And get selfish here. What are you best at? What is your lane? What is your product? What is that smallest thing? I mean, get granular about it. I don't care if you say you want to go from this address to that address and only haul this at this rate. Like, get specific about what you want, but how are you going to be better at somebody else in providing that service? So you have to know that. That's number 1, because otherwise, no wonder you hate sales. You think everybody has to be a prospect. The fact is, most people aren't prospects. If there's, I'm going to make numbers up here, but 3 million businesses in the US or something, I'm like 9.999 million of them are going to be not prospects. So we want to identify what it is that you're looking for. That's the most important part. And what can you actually do for them? Second is, let's search for them. There's all the tools out there. Ask ChatGPT, it might tell you. I'm looking for businesses who have like this type of product in this zip code or this market. Now, I know there's not necessarily a map that says.
Well, eCarrier Check has a great tool for that. So get their tool. It's full of exactly that. Right down to the commodity.
That's exactly what we want then. So right off the bat, without having to make a single phone call, we just made the world a lot smaller. Right? It's not that we hate sales. Gets a bad rap. We're selling right now in one way, shape, form, or another. I mean, all of us are. Right. And sales gets a bad rap. It's the pushy thing that we don't want to do. It's the cold calling and the introductions or the interruptions or things that we don't want to do. So let's minimize how much of it we actually have to do. So we just do that little bit of research and make the smallest amount possible. And if you do have somebody who even can do warm calls and find out, do they have the volume and where do they ship to? So qualify it. That's the next step, is to make sure it's an opportunity that you actually want.
Okay.
Now we're in front of them. Now it's an easy conversation to have, because you do what they want and you are ready to tell them how you do it better. So there are a couple things for truck drivers. You have a significant advantage because everybody will tell you they want to work with asset-based carriers. I don't know anybody out there who says otherwise. Mm-hmm. Of course they do, right? So, but just having an asset isn't enough, because here's the other thing. They tell you that they want to work with asset-based carriers, then why aren't they?
Imagine it could be a whole host of reasons. I mean, how many carriers are reaching out to them to try to do business with them? number
It's
one.
like, how many companies out there, how many bazillions of dollars are getting spent on all these or all these tracking apps and
Right.
technology companies? Well, they wouldn't exist if the truck drivers just answered the telephone.
to an extent, there's
What I'm saying is there's a manifest destiny thing here, right? Like,
right.
they have a lot more control of certain things that, I mean, the market's going to solve itself. So that's one
Right.
reason why the brokers exist.
Well, broker, people are hate on this, but brokers can do things that we can't. I can't handle 17 loads a day. I can't cross border things. I can't do customs work. I can't do warehousing. I can't do 3, 4, 5 PL logistics from start to finish, integrate into their manufacturing process. I can't do all that as a carrier. CH Robinson can do all that. So
I think that's why it's so important to get. Sorry, I was just going to say, and that's why it's so important to get super specific about what you're looking for and how to present it, because that's what you can't do. Now, that said, I mean, honestly, if opportunity always arises from this stuff, then it's almost not worth it for an independent truck driver to do a lot of sales unless you can find somebody to do that one lane, because he's looking for something in particular, right? And he's got one truck. So, but what would make sense is, instead of looking at the 3PLs or the brokers as adversaries, sell to them. Make them work for you. Like, if I'm a truck driver, I wouldn't have to be on DAT unless somebody hosed me at the last minute. Like, I wouldn't have to be posted up anywhere. I'd be on LinkedIn. I'd be making connections. So that way, like, my truck is always moving. I wouldn't need to work with 5,000 brokers. I'd work with 3 of them.
Right.
And make that network small. Like, use the ones for your advantage, because there are a lot of bad actors out there. And when there's so many of them, it is hard to find out who's who until you find out the hard way. So network, build a community. Like, we talked about this earlier. A lot of drivers drive because they say they want to run their own business, but they aren't acting as business owners. I can call myself a business owner all day, but at the end of the day, I provide a service for money.
And that's a fair statement. It might hurt somebody's feelings, but it's a fair statement. And when I look at things honestly, up till 7, 8 years ago, that was me too. I didn't get serious about running a business till 7, 8 years ago. Before that, it was just, I was an owner operator running a truck, and not much more to it than that.
And it may sound like I'm putting them down, but the fact is, these are just opportunities. These are like, they're opportunities is what they are, and I get it too, because if there's one, I'm a speaker. If all I could do was speak, I wouldn't prospect. I wouldn't invoice. I wouldn't sell people. I would just get booked and I would just go speak. Of course I would. But if that's all I try to do is speak, I'm going to starve.
Right.
I have to find out who are the people I want to talk to, who are the people I can help. How am I going to help them better than other people? How am I going to communicate that to the people I need to talk to? I have to play that game. And I'll tell you what, it is tough. This is something I do understand, because if I were selling for you, I could be ruthless. But when I'm selling for me as the product, that's different. And so I could understand that as an independent truck driver being like, not wanting to feel salesy, I guess.
Right.
But that goes to my point earlier about know what you're best at, know how you can help people. Because if you know how you're providing a good service to somebody else, then you shouldn't ever feel uncomfortable about asking for the opportunity to do it.
So here's something, maybe you can shed some insight on this. A friend of mine, Paul, has a service where he tries to connect small carriers with direct shippers, right? So we'll go through and he'll make cold calls. He'll develop leads. He did this for me in the beginning, and develop the leads. So it becomes a warm contact. By the time he's ready to hand it off to the carrier, it's a warm contact, right? Like, they're ready to do business. All you have to do is call and introduce yourself. 9.7 people out of 10 will pick up the phone and make that call. Now, you said something. This is the thing that got me off of your video with eCarrier Check. You said, it's just a phone call. They can't hurt you. I'm like, damn it, he's right. I got to get over that. How do you take somebody and help get them over that fear, because this fear of making the contact and cold calling or whatever it's a big issue. I've experienced it. You've probably experienced it. For some people, it's this paralyzing fear that you can't get past. Do you have any advice for that?
I don't remember who originally said this quote, but my old boss, Bobby, once told me that you can measure a person's success by the number of uncomfortable conversations they're willing to have.
I've been having a lot lately, so I must be getting ready to have success. I don't know.
That became my pre-meeting warm-up. If I'm about to make a phone call that I'm uncomfortable about making, or go into a meeting that I'm comfortable at having, whether it be to a customer, to a sales rep, to a carrier, and whatever, I say to myself, you can measure a person's success by the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. My job is the effort and the action, not the outcome. It even says right there, the uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. So it's literally saying, I can boil it down into 2 words. Ready?
Not willing to win, willing to have.
Willing to have. Right? So I can boil it down into 2 words. Hold on. Let me get into a meditative state to make sure I say these right. Okay. Fuck it.
There you go.
That's it. If you have to do that every time you say fuck it, all you have to do is dial the phone. And this is where it's important. Now, I talk a lot about purpose. All right. And I can go on a tangent about that too. And I have, and I will again, but it's not about making the phone call, making a sale. It's about what is that higher purpose for what you're doing, right? And so if I don't know what everyone's individual drive is for why they are a driver, but if, let's say, independence is part of that, making a phone call is a small price to pay, right? Yeah. The cost of doing business, you could do it from the road. So, all right. Now, I don't know, again, the purpose, and I would love to talk to some people and find out more why they do what they do, because maybe I can help them connect that activity. I grinded out phone calls that I didn't want to make that I thought were 10 years beneath me. But that's because I knew what I was doing was for a purpose. I didn't care about the company I was working for anymore. It wasn't for them. It was for me. You know, we don't work for other people. We work to support our lives, our dreams. So, second thing, we want to take our mind off of this as much as possible. If you don't want to do it, why do we want to build it up? This is why scripts come into play. And I hear all the time, I don't want to sound like a robot, or I don't want to sound practical. Okay, just shut up, because you sound like an idiot when you aren't using a script. Nobody wants to get babbled to. You know what? I ran a masterclass last Wednesday night on goal setting and igniting action. And this is literally 4 days after I'm on Nate and Jared's show talking about the use of scripts. Okay. I'm on my masterclass and I deviated from my script because I felt uncomfortable. And what did it cost me? I went over by 10 minutes and I didn't get to the nut of it. Didn't really even get a chance to pitch myself. Right. And when I went back and I watched the video, I could see that I deviated because I was uncomfortable. And then whatever gibberish I splattered out after that wasn't worth it. So there's a reason to use a script, because you shouldn't be using your brain. And the thing is, practice the script, rehearse the script. NFL players practice 6 days a week. You can't take 20 minutes to role play. You could do it by yourself, do it with a buddy. But here's the other part. I think we get afraid that you have to read off some script like, hi, my name is Jack. I used to be addicted to crack, and now I sell magazines. Sorry, I was being the guy from Office Space. But throughout the whole process, no, you only need to script like the first 7 seconds. You know, the part that you're uncomfortable making, make it easier. Like the, hi, my name is, I am calling for this person. This is why I am calling. Here's my call to action, go. And then whatever the person says, sometimes back in the day when I was in telecom, I used to really ramp myself up to to get in fights. Like overcoming objections was like a sport to me. All right. And this was in New England. People would put hands on me.
I bet they would.
And it was exhausting. So I can teach 1,000 ways to overcome objections, but the fact is a lot more is given to that than it needs to be. You know, I have a rule of thumb. I'll try 2 different ways, or if they say the same thing, like if they say no three different things or say no 3 different times, I'm going to move on. I'm not trying to ruin my day over that conversation just to get somebody's attention. So you can have your own rule of thumb. I don't even care if you try to overcome objections. Just we'll get better as we go. Just make the call. We're looking for fish. We want to shoot fish in a barrel, because I'll tell you what, if you do have the product, you're the truck driver, you have the product, take some of that power back. Plus, not for nothing, if you are selling, don't sell to accounts that you don't want. That eliminates that whole I don't want to go here thing. Like, you can literally look for the customer that you are going to want the most, which means you are probably going to serve them the best. Then you don't have to sell anymore. Find the customer that can just keep you running.
We like to think, a lot of people, we don't need brokers. We have insightful knowledge about the industry. We know more about customers than the brokers do. A lot of times about the lanes, about even the production, stuff like that. And we just also happen to have the number one thing that everybody wants, and that's a truck. Why don't we use that? Why aren't we using that leverage more? Instead of surrendering it to somebody else. If that's what you really want for yourself, build the confidence enough to say, you know what, I got right here what everybody's looking for. I'm going to give it a whirl, see what happens. And what is it? You gave a good baseball analogy to me when we were talking on the phone the other day. Oh, you mind saying that again? Because I forget it. But it was insightful.
This is why I say math over emotion, because numbers matter. And if you know your numbers, then you don't have to stress over what's going to happen. And so I gave the example that, and I'm just going to say this in sales, if I know I'm going to get 7 no's for out of every 10 phone calls or something like that, right? Then I don't have to stress about it anymore. But here was the analogy. If you failed 7 out of 10 times as a Major League Baseball player, you would be an all-star.
You're probably in the Hall of Fame.
You might be in the Hall of Fame.
You hit 300 for your career, right?
Yeah. And that's failing 70% of the time. So one of the reasons that the other part about then you have to disconnect yourself from the results when it comes to a cold call, like just making that initial phone call. It's not even a cold call, given the situation we're talking about. It's literally just picking up the phone. If you disconnect yourself from that outcome and focus solely on the effort, it's just a lot easier. Your job is to swing at the ball. Whatever happens, happens. When you disconnect yourself from even trying to avoid failure, you can't avoid failure. So don't get worked up about it. Expect it. Like, I have had people call me. And when I go to call them back, I got screamed so bad that we practically got in a fight. And I'm like, I don't understand. You called me. And I'm getting into this. People just, you know what? You don't need it. Be like, all right, well, screw it, next. And because here's the thing too, all right? Unless you're 65 years old, you're in this for the long game. Mm-hmm. A no today, bro, you have the product. All right. The market's going to do what's going to do. 3PLs have been coming up and down. I don't know how, depending on what day you look on LinkedIn, there's 1,000 more or 1,000 less than there were the day before, but you're still the product.
Build these products are going to change: the truck and the freight. But there's always going to be the freight. There's always going to be the need for the truck. I don't care if it's an electric truck or an autonomous truck. They're going to need a truck, right? And you have the truck. So next week may be different. Next year will be a different set of circumstances than it is now. So
now let me offer this thought too, because I think there is something that's taken for granted, and because we are talking about the fact that they have the truck, they have the product. And I'm saying that because to boost their confidence, they are important, right? Without them, there is no industry.
Right.
We're walking things down the road, right? But that's not enough. If it were,
especially not anymore.
No.
There may have been a time.
Because here's the other thing. The customers don't know. Have you looked on who's on the dock now? A lot of people retired in 2020, all right? The dock, which I call basically the transportation department, is a lot younger than it was too. This is the app generation. This isn't the I just trust my guy to show up at the freight generation. So if you aren't able to give them data, communication, and information, they're going to look for it from somewhere else. And so by saying I have the truck, they don't care because they know somebody else will have the truck if you don't. So the one thing that you can do different is simply this: is tell them I facilitate and communicate information. Like I provide the specific things that they require, but you have to also, this comes down to ask yourself, do you really want to? Because a lot of these customers, right, they have requirements that require you to not be behind the wheel, but behind a computer.
Yeah.
And this is where maybe embracing the broker. And again, rather than just sort of putting yourself out there for the market, sell them. Why wait for them to call you? Call them. Just make some relationships.
And you can take a broker that you may not like, or a brokerage you may not like, and turn them into a business partner. It's the selling to them, right? You find that whatever agent from whatever brokerage, and just keep calling them. Hey, today, what do you got? Or I'm over here. I'm going to have a truck over there. I'm looking to do this. Here's the equipment I got. Get them involved in pictures and tell them what you normally do. Just keep exchanging information. Every once in a while, throw him a bone. Say, hey, there's this lead. You may want to call this place over here. They had a couple trucks not show up today. The guy seems really unhappy. Maybe you want to call over here and see if you can get this freight. And that freight might be the exact freight you're looking to get. Throw him a bone every once in a while. It's going to come full circle. Now, maybe not to just the average Joe on a transactionary call, but if you got a relationship with this guy and he's an agent, an independent agent, he's going to make that cold call. That goes a long ways. Not only taking, but give. You have to give.
You're 1,000% right, because I get why there's so much adversity. I'll just say tension between brokers and carriers, and part of it is cultural. And I just mean, like, I don't want to name companies, but some football field brokerages that don't train reps anymore. It's always the desk ride. And it's this thing where they learn that the job is yelling at carriers. Like, that's how they learn the job, is these knockdown, drag out conversations instead of sales conversations. And I think that there's probably a lot more of that on the brokerage side than there was in the past. I feel like there's a lot less sales training and a lot less personnel development. So yeah, there's some bad habits that are getting passed down. And that's, that can get difficult too. I am not convinced that we have to be so transactional. I am not willing to give up on the fact that we can't create value for the customer, for the carrier, for the 3PL involved. Like, there's a lot of work that customers require these days. So if you aren't willing to do it, then instead of looking at selling to shippers, I mean, again, you know what? You have the product. Who wants that more than who wants to cut the truck more than the shipper? It's the 3PL.
Well, who needs trucks all the time? Other trucking companies that don't have enough trucks. Their guys maybe on vacations. My favorite people to do business with, and my favorites of any brokerages out there, are trucking companies with a brokerage, because they know their customers, because their trucks go there all the freaking time. They got all this information, how long does it take to get unloaded, and the business hours. And they might even know somebody there because they're the ones calling to schedule the appointments. They have a much more intimate knowledge, and whatever problem you encounter, chances are they've encountered that same problem with their own truck at some point going there. Those are my favorite people to build relationships with, are other trucking companies with a brokerage. So do that. One of my clients change the industry.
Back in 2020, my first consulting client, asset-based company, the reason he started the 3PL side wasn't because he just saw everybody making so much money. He wanted to fill his trucks. So our value proposition, our what do we do better than someone else, or articulate how, was we only went after customers that we could actually build around, because he would hire more drivers.
Yeah.
So we were looking for consistent business. So he basically just created, and in the meantime, we would run brokerage for anything that didn't fit his drivers. But the idea was that we would look for consistent business to keep his drivers ultimately going. So it was a sales arm for the business. And once you know what you're looking for, the world gets a lot smaller. We don't have to call every lead in the world.
Yeah, let's go through some comments here, if you don't mind.
Please.
I'm interested to see. Talking about freight and stuff. Lamb says, Nick, you're dropping some knowledge here. Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Lakita is in here, says, any advice for a new freight broker? That's just now coming into logistics world.
Absolutely. Niche down. What I've been saying about what do you do well, what do you do better than somebody else? Like, you need to niche down. And right now, especially, there are too many people saying, I work with anyone who. Your prospect list, you need to be able to say as specific as possible. Now, obviously, I don't know if you have any experience, but even if you use your experience from prior positions or just worldly experience, whether about a product or the type of people, and obviously I don't know the company you work for, what you specialize in. So I might have that conversation internally, but what you don't want to be doing is calling everybody and anybody and just throwing freight up on the internet and hoping that people are going to come get it. It's more important for you to become a specialist than a generalist, especially right now. And you can always expand on that. So even if you picked a single product and just worked on that product for a while, then you would become an expert in that product. And once you're an expert in that product, it's going to be easier to sell to the customers. Once you're an expert in that product, then it's also going to be easier to sell to the carriers. So once you've got that going on, then you can begin to expand by whether it be other product lines, geography, et cetera, like that. But one thing that I talk about training a lot, and one thing that I used to do is we would actually train people in other industries. So there's so much emphasis on how a salesperson needs to know everything about, trucking. And I disagree. I think a good salesperson needs to become an expert in the company they're selling to. And that's how they create the value, because otherwise, how are you going to know what kind of problems they have? You only know what kind of problems we have.
That's a very good point.
So niche down, and that's how you're going to be able to open doors.
Okay, that's great advice. Walking each other home says buyers are liars. Okay. Freight Connect with Paul says, great conversation, gentlemen. Yeah, that's my buddy Paul here. We do a lot of business together.
Paul, thank you.
Lamb says, ask your brokers if they are working on any RFPs or if they have any coming up. Yes, it's another great thing.
Again, sell to, take the word sell out of it, man. Like, who have you moved freight for in the last 6 months that you liked having moved freight for? What broker? Call them up, say, what do you got going in the next couple of weeks? What lanes you work? This is where I want to go. What else you got looking on? Build the relationship.
You aren't saying be proactive, are you?
I believe that might be the word. You know what? It's like,
as a truck driver, you got a million things to do a day. And I understand it's like, I don't have so much time to quite work that far ahead, just trying to get through today. You have a lot of obstacles every day. It's almost like you need another person. But,
have you ever heard of the book, The One Thing?
I haven't.
All right. You got to read it. And I recommend that for everybody. I'm doing a reread on it right now. I don't reread books, but it's a book on goals, priority, time management, running your life, running your business. But the premise of the book is that all of your priorities, time management, and everything can be solved by asking yourself this one question, which is, what is the one thing I can do right now that will make all things easier or unnecessary? So when you just said, I know as a truck driver, you have all this to do. How much would get eliminated if you just had somebody selling for you the right freight? How much time do we waste on other bullshit because we're resisting things or we're doing activities that we want to do because we're comfortable doing them?
Well, then you got to go back to the reason. Okay, why are you resisting these things?
Well, there's a reason I emphasized.
I think a lot of us, uncomfortable, and I think a lot of us, and I put myself in this category. Working on getting over it is that my, call it ego, call it foolish pride, call it whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it's hard to admit when you need help, or some tasks are better left to somebody else. But once you start having those conversations with yourself, things get better. Things get better.
I know these are cliches, but if nothing changes, nothing changes. And it's true. And if you only do all the things you've ever done, you're only going to get all the things you've ever gotten. If you want something different, we have to do something different. And I know we're not happy with the current situation because candidly, why else are they on the show today? Right? Why are we here? Why are we having the discussion? Why is this an issue if there wasn't a better way to do things? So I get it. Knowing the answer isn't enough. That makes, people tell, I mean, there's 1,000 things that I know are better for me than I do every single day. Right.
Yeah. One last topic, and this will probably take us to the end here, because I imagine you probably have a good bit to say about it, is we all encounter this problem eventually of getting stuck. So that can mean 100 different things to 100 different people. Means something to me, means something to you. Stuck in your business, stuck in your personal life. You've had a lot to overcome in your life. What do you do to get unstuck and just get past this one thing that's kind of holding you back? Or you're in a rut, right? Like for the past few weeks, I've just been in this rut where it's like hard to push myself to do, the hard things that I need to do. What do you do to get past all this?
All right, those are two different questions, so two different answers. Because a rut's different than stuck.
Okay.
With a rut, believe it or not, make one change. One change. Drink your coffee with another hand. Take a right instead of a left. Park in a different spot. A couple years ago, now I train every morning. All right. I hate waking up. Doesn't matter. I get up, I train. Get up, I train. A couple years ago, I was wicked stressed. Things were getting me down. I was having trouble getting out of bed in the morning. I'm looking at my training schedule getting longer and longer. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm so overwhelmed by all the things I'm not doing. And I'm making this huge deal out of everything. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. So one morning I said, fuck it. And I woke up. I just poured a cup of coffee. I grabbed my ruck pack and I just walked. I walked for like 5 miles. Sun came up around me and I just kind of relaxed. And the very next morning, I resumed my training schedule. And it wasn't that I needed a break from training. I needed a break from the mental stress of training, these things that I had built up. It's easy to get overwhelmed. I mean, life, especially these days with all the red dots in our universe, right? Like your attention is getting called everywhere. Things are blinking all the time. It's real easy to get into that rut and all of a sudden feel mundane when we feel like we can't keep up with anything. So we have to take one little piece of control. And I mean this, whether it be, like for those if you're driving, if you listen to audiobooks, listen to music. If you listen to music, listen to a podcast. All right. If you run and you take a left, go take a right. Lace up your shoes, do something different. Mix one little thing up. There's an expression, move a muscle, change a thought. Have the conversation with yourself on the other part of the room. If you work from home, work in a different room. Take a different chair, stand up for 5 minutes. This is something that was really uncomfortable for me last week because I do get very into my routine. And I do that to be efficient, but I also realized sometimes you can get into a rut. I had to look at what is the one thing. And I realized there was a couple things I was doing in the morning that really could have waited till the end of the day. And it was really uncomfortable. But I was so irked by that, I moved forward through everything else. It was just the one change that I needed to kind of keep moving. So when you feel in a rut, make a change. That's it. That's an easy one. It's easy. It actually kind of is as easy as it sounds. We need to just move a muscle, change a thought. We need to make the small changes. Now, when we're really stuck, the difference is this usually comes after we achieve something or when we went through a transition. So, a lot of people went through a job change, and sometimes that means a promotion or something like that too. Could be a personal thing, right? Divorce, an illness, something like that. Or we just made that big sale, or we had that big quarter, we had that big year. And now we are like I was sitting on the couch, terrified of what to do next. And another visual would be like this, climbing a mountain, because we all see mountains as like going straight up, straight down, but that's not what it's like climbing a mountain. There's all these little peaks. And then every time you get to the top of one, we hit a plateau. We start celebrating on that plateau and we expect that's it. We don't want to climb again. So that's why we feel stuck. We're resisting stepping up to the next thing. So what we need to do then is we have to first just be aware, accept, why are we here? Why am I on the couch right now? Why do I feel stuck? And then the first step is this: determine the vision. And I mean this, dream big. What's the next peak like, whether it be personally, professionally? And I mean it, dream big, unencumbered. If you start dreaming and you think about your bills and you're not dreaming big enough, what is the next thing? Because if we think small ball, it's not going to get us off the couch. Think about the shit that excites you, that sets your heart on fire. All right. That's one. And two is define objectives then. What are tangible objectives that I can get, that I can create, that'll get me started down this path? So even if you have this abstract vision for yourself, for your life, for your next step, for the next week, next month, next 5 years, we still have to have some sort of tangible objectives to help us get there. To be honest, that's what this is for me. Obstacle course racing. That's not my purpose. It's a hobby. The lifestyle, though, is what helps me achieve what I want to do. It's what keeps me moving. So I set tangible objectives about races and training and stuff like that, because that's how it keeps me moving. And then what we do is detail the wildly specific and stupidly simple action steps to get started. And when I say wildly specific and stupidly simple, it's like this. If you want to... Well, now that I said this, all right, well, I'll just say me, right? My vision is to be more of a competitive athlete so that I can show other diabetics that we don't need a level playing field. All right. My objective then is I'm going to complete the Spartan race, Killington Ultra, which is probably the hardest race. Well, it's definitely the hardest race in the country. 31-mile obstacle course race, 17,000 feet of climbing, 70 obstacles. I've DNF'd it twice. But now I take the wildly specific and stupidly simple action steps, and I plan out my schedule. So schedule it might be the most important thing. If you are somebody right now saying my vision is to actually be an independent business owner, and you define the specific objectives as, okay, acquire new sales, and therefore I need to make cold calls, or I need to make phone calls, this wildly specific and stupidly simple action steps, schedule it.
Yeah.
I put out a video the other day and on my social media, and it was kind of corny, but I don't care, where I said, you know what the first step is of like what happens if you want to go for a run, but you don't want to go. And I'm like, just open the door. And I literally walked over and I just opened my front door. I'm like, all right, well, now I have to go to the door because the door's open. So, well, now I'm outside the door, and now I'm on the street, and now I have a choice. I can start my run, or I can go backwards. I'm not going backwards. I might as well start running. Just open the door. Whatever the stupidest little action step you can take, make the phone call, block the time, Google the thing. That's usually the first step when breaking things down to the specific. Is more often than not, there's something that we don't know how to do. And that's what's blocking us. We don't know how to ask for help. We don't know how to find out what it is. So oftentimes we simply have to Google the thing. How do I start this? And find the resources to get in it. When I ran the Boston Marathon in 2018, I'm not a fast runner. I wasn't going to be able to qualify, but I knew that you could get in other ways. I had no idea. So I put it on Facebook, said, hey, does anybody know how I do this? I was connected to somebody who helped me run for a charity and got me in. But I mean, it was just that simple act of saying, how do I learn how to do this?
Wow. That's good advice. Very simple, yet you don't necessarily, it's not the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, here's the thing too, right? Let me give you a physical perspective. If we are climbing a mountain, okay? Right now we're at the base of the mountain. You can only see here. I take 2 steps up the mountain. My vision is infinitely wider already.
Yeah.
My perspective is dramatically different just from taking a couple steps up the mountain. And that's not a metaphor. That's how it actually is. So we want to take as many wildly specific and stupidly action steps as we can before we even have to make a decision. So I talk about my morning routine. I'm waking up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, letting the dog out, putting the coffee on, saying some prayers. I'm meditating for a few minutes, and I'm immediately into my warm-up. That happens before I even have a chance to decide whether I want to work out today or not. And at that point, I'm already working out.
Man, now I got a whole lot of work to do.
Start with the first.
You can't not do it.
You know what? Don't even say that. I have one thing to do, just the one thing. Because that's another area is we get so overwhelmed, right? We see the mountain. We don't see the first step. Well, bro, I'm training for a really big race, man. All right. Like 70% of the people who do this race fail. So why aren't I out training right now? It's like, oh my God, I feel like that all the time. I feel like I should always be climbing or something. But here's how I rationalize it. And here's how I make it to the wildly specific and stupidly simple. What is the one thing I need to be doing in order for me to achieve my goal in that race? Well, I need to train tomorrow because I already trained today. All right. In order for me to train tomorrow, what do I need to do? I need to get a good night's sleep so I wake up on time. Okay. Well, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. So what can I do about that right now? I need to be more relaxed so I can sleep tonight. And the way that I do that is this. Ready? 31-mile race, 81 days away from now, 17,000 feet of climbing. And the action step that is going to get me closer to my goal was taking a breath.
Yeah. So, to translate that to business, to trucking or whatever, because that's what we talk about. I suppose end of the day rolls around. A common routine is, we get parked, get some dinner, maybe get a shower, watch TV, and go to bed. We got to find a way to squeeze in there. What's my strategy for tomorrow? What's the one thing for tomorrow? What's the one thing I'm going to do for my business tomorrow? How can I take what I did today and then advance that one step for tomorrow? Is that the right way to go about it?
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I know I'm pretty self-aware of some of my weaknesses. And so I build part of my routine around that. That's why I train in the morning. Like one of my good friends, he runs at night. Like he's out grinding out miles at like 11 o'clock. And I'm like, I'm long asleep by then. Because my thing is, I know if I don't do it in the morning, I won't do it. So this is the thing that when you said park your truck, then we shower up and get some dinner. You park your truck and you do the business of being a business owner. Then you can go shower and get dinner. Okay. And so before that day is over, what are you doing tomorrow? I don't know any successful business owner who doesn't know what they're doing tomorrow.
Right.
You know what? I'm not even successful yet, and I know what I'm doing tomorrow, and I bet you know what your day looks like too. So we're not talking about 7 hours of sitting in a board meeting here, 15 minutes with your phone and a notebook or something like. And it doesn't have, what is the one thing I can do tomorrow that's going to move me closer to my goals? What is that one thing? And then schedule it. Boom, done. Go get some dinner. Start there. Like when I first started on my own here, you know what I did? I just started connecting to everybody on LinkedIn and telling them what I did. That's how Nate and Jared and I hooked up. I literally was just sending messages, not even pitches. I might send you the same message. Just, maybe. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Like, nice to meet you. Let me know if I can help you someday. I didn't know what to do, so I did something. And at the end of the day, now that I actually have some traction, at the end of the day, it's important that I actually either do my admin, like send emails, take notes, etc., or I very specifically schedule it for the next morning, because here's the thing: tomorrow's a long time away, man, and I forget.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I forget. And surprises happen overnight. Things happen. You wake up to new things tomorrow.
Yeah, so that's why I say it's important. And of course, like I hammer that point in because I have to remind myself of that too. I'm like, bro, you're not a sales rep who can just kick this stuff down the road. You own this business. You have to run it like a business. The lights don't go out till the work is done.
Right. Okay. So you've been very gracious and giving us an hour here. How do people find your book? What's your preferred method of contact? Where do people find you? Do you offer any kind of services, coaching for people? What do you recommend people watch to learn more about you, or go to learn and talk and plug your book?
All right. I am everywhere on the internet at Stride Motivation. The website is stridemotivation.com. And the best way to get a hold of me is just send me an email, nick@stridemotivation.com. I'm looking for people who were listening to this today and want to talk about getting their mindset for sales. I want to have the conversations about mindset. I'm looking for other achievement-driven professionals who feel stuck and need some help getting clarity behind their goals and getting specific on the objectives and having an accountability partner to give them those wildly specific and stupidly simple action steps. ultimately, you know, when I talk about like the things I really want to do, of course, I want to speak. I know I have a story to tell, and I have a message that I believe can help inspire others to overcome the adversity and things that they face in their lives. So, of course, I'm always looking for opportunities, whether it be conferences, meetings, events, virtual or otherwise, to help others. The book Through the Fire is available on Amazon. That is the story of the 4-time cancer survivor, type 1 diabetic, and recovering alcoholic who became an obstacle course racer and defied it all. However, the next book, Selling Inspired, and I hate that I don't have the cover done yet. Selling Inspired, a mental endurance guide for enduring sales performance. It does apply to all levels of sales because it's about enduring sales performance. It's not about how to just get good at sales real fast. It's about how to be your happiest, best self while doing a profession that can steal your soul if you're not careful. And that book will be available on Amazon 1 month from now, and I look forward to sending you a copy as a gift. So,
well, awesome. One last thing is people tend to look down on the word sales. They see it as a dirty word. I tell you what, salespeople, if you can learn to sell, you're writing your ticket to success in life, because salespeople are the most highly paid people in this country. So don't look down on it. Don't be intimidated. Learn it. Learn it. It can be one of the best traits, one of the best things you ever do for yourself. And if you're looking to round out your business, make it more complete, grow, go to that next level, that's the step where all your competitors are going to fall off. So push yourself over that hump. Get good at it. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice. Nick can help you. All of Nick's material. Hopefully, he'll come back and do this again. And if you need to reach out to him, email Nick at stridemotivation.com. Check out his website, Stride Motivation. Nick, thanks much for doing this. This was great. I look forward to talking to you. I'm going to talk to you about something here, doing something with you. And so hang in there.
got it, man. Thanks for having me. Pleasure was mine. Hopefully I don't have too many pitchforks out there for me.
No. Very good. Thank you, sir. We'll hang in there for a second. Everybody else, we'll see you all again later.